So continuing from where we left off, we're going to be styling this particular article. And this article, if you remember, by looking at our code view, has the ID of main. So let's go about doing just that. I'm going to go to my design view, and we're going to switch to the CSS styles. And let's position ourselves perhaps right after our landing, since they are both articles and they come in front of the aside. So I'm going to say new CSS rule, and less specific. I'm not looking for the H1 just yet. We're just targeting the main. So we'll click OK. Now the main thing we want to do with the main ID is to go to the category call box, and first and foremost, let's limit its width to something like 640 pixels, and let's float it on the left. I'm also going to ensure that it has a background color, but this time I want it to be pure white. And pure white is going to actually show up against the off-white background that we have in place at the moment. I'm going to give it a little bit of margin, so I'll go back to the box for a second. And let's say margin on the bottom of, well, depends on what we want to work with. I'm just going to say 20 pixels for the moment, but inevitably we might want to increase that amount just to keep it the same as we had on our index page. Also, I'm going to give it some padding. Padding on the top of about 20 pixels. That seems to be the average that we're working with. As well, I'm giving it 20 on the bottom. And I think that's all we really need to work with. The only other thing I want to do is to give it a rounded edge. So I'll click OK. And you can see that now that it's floating left, our side moves over to this way. And we also have it in white. However, as I mentioned, we're going to add the property border radius. And I'm going to copy that, Control-C or Command-C. Give it a value of 10 pixels. We'll add our property again for Mozilla. Control-V to paste, or Command-V if you're on a Mac. We'll scroll down, add the final property for WebKit. And Control-V to paste, or Command-V if you're on a Mac. All right, well, now that we have that done, if we go to Live View, we should see nice rounded edges exactly the way we want it to. And it's going to be consistent with what we have on the first page. So everything should still be in the exact same position, same place, but the text and the pictures that we enter into here are going to determine how big this article is. So first thing we want to do is to target the H1. So I'm going to put my cursor right in here, and I'm going to leave it in live view so we can see the text. Then I'm going to come back to where we have our main. Now this might go down to the bottom again just simply because of the fact that we are in live view, but not to worry, we'll move it back in position when we need to. So with the main done, I'm going to come in here and create a new CSS rule. If we go to compound, we should have a less specific main H1. So I click on less specific. Press OK, and what are we going to do here? Well, first of all, I want the Bebas Neue to be turned on. Now, depends on how big we want it to be. Now, if we want it to be relatively large, we could say 2.7, but I think I'm just going to go with 2 M's at the moment. Take a look at that, and you can see what it looks like. If we need it to be bigger, I'll double check to see what we had on the index page, and we'll probably copy exactly what that looks like. Instead of loaded with new features, we'll come back and we'll change what that text says soon enough. So the only other thing I really need to do is to give it a little bit of a drop shadow, so I'll click OK. Now if we want to, we can change the text. So if we're out of live view, I could come in here and we could say any number of things. Now this is the download page, so let's imagine we had an imaginary app for the Killer Sites website and we wanted to download it. Let's say it's called Killer App, so I'll say download the Killer App. Now, the word Killer App, perhaps we can create a span that will style green, much like we did on previous pages. So if I go to my code view, I'm just going to take killer app here, and I'll put in a little span tag right there first. So there's our first tag, and just before closing of the H1, we'll close this span tag. Okay, so now if we go back to our design view and I come back in here, I can select this text, can go to my CSS, and I can say new based on our selection. Less specific, we're targeting that span now. And that span is going to have a background color, or an actual foreground color rather, of green. So I'll just use that green and I'll click OK. Now if we were in live view, we would be able to see exactly what that looks like. Okay, that's fantastic. I'm just going to double check to see what the banner H1 actually was, or it was a H2 rather, and it's 2.4 M. So from page 1 to page 2, I want to be relatively consistent. So I think I'll scroll down to the bottom where my H1 is here, and I'll just enter in 2.4. Good. While I am here, I'm going to give it a text shadow. And this text shadow will have some values. Perhaps I can just come in here myself and enter in 0px, and I'll put a space and say 2px, another space, and we'll give it a background color. I think the background color I want to use is going to be the green, so maybe I'll just copy paste these and worry about that a little bit later. Or let me just enter in a value here. I'll just say 8 2b and 917. Okay, so now we've got that gray color, and as you can see, I've got my main H1 at the bottom, so I'm going to move that up. The main H1 span is here, so maybe what I'll do is to go to the span and we'll add a text shadow as well. And this text shadow will pretty much look the same, except I think what I want to do is to give it 0px and 2px, but I'll just put in a little gray, so 333 should be fine. It might be a little bit dark, so depends on what you like, but I'm going to leave it as is. So as you can see, we've got the H1s in place. Now what I want to do is to put in some paragraph information. So I think the easiest thing to do is to just grab some Lorem Ipsum dummy text online. So I'm going to go to a browser, and now here in my browser I've just navigated to the lipsum.com website where we can generate Lorem Ipsum text. I don't think I'll need too much, so I'm just going to grab the first paragraph, right-click and say copy. Then we'll return to Dreamweaver. And if you're in design view, we can't do this in live view, but if I turn off live view, notice I can just press return, Command V or Control V on a PC. And check it out. We just pasted in a little bit of text that way. So now I have a paragraph of information, and we will be styling this as well. So let's see how we can go about styling this. I'm going to put my cursor inside of my paragraph, and once we're in that paragraph, let's come in here and just create a new CSS rule. This one is going to be less specific, targeting mains paragraphs. All right, and in here, not really much difference that I want to be working with. I could say 1M. I think 1 should be fine, but you know, you could increase that or decrease it, seeing on exactly what you want to be doing. But the line height, I think I'll go for 1.8. Let's see what that gives us. Just a little bit of extra space, you know. And perhaps I can maybe go with 0.9. Let's see what that looks like. It's a little too small for my liking. Now, again, I could go 0.95. Remember, it's all relative. So I think I'll leave it at that for the moment. Actually, looking at it, I think I just want to go back to 1. So I'll leave it at 1 and 1.8 for the line height, but I think I'll also put in a little bit of margin on the bottom. And the reason being is because we want a little bit of space after our paragraphs. So 1.5 maybe M's. And I'll click OK. Now that we've got that in place, right after this, I'm going to press return. And notice, because we are inside of a paragraph, remember, anytime you press return in Design View, it automatically, in the Code View, creates an empty paragraph. So let's just drag an image into this empty paragraph. I'm going to go to my assets, hit refresh, just to make sure I've got what I'm looking for. And you can see in here there's one that says SubPic Pen. It's just a picture of a pen, nothing really all that fancy. And I'll just drop it in. I'll give it some alternate text, and I'll say sign here or something appropriate. Now we have an image in place. Isn't that nice? So right after that image, I think I'll actually, let's copy both of these elements here. What I'll do is to copy the headline and the paragraph, and I'll say Command C or Control C if you're on a PC. And then I'll click right over here where the image is, and I'll press Command V or Control V if you are, of course, on a PC. So now we have download killer app, download killer app. Maybe I'll just change this and I'll say now available. On the, and we'll change the word killer app to iPad. Okay. So if we turn on Live View, we'll see our text a lot smaller, first of all, and you can see that now we've also introduced a picture, which looks great. And as you can see, the picture is sort of aligned within the boundaries of our text, and that's perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that. However, if you wanted to, you could have made your picture a little bit longer and maybe included it up to here so that it bled right to the edge. Completely up to you. It's totally a stylistic thing. I'm going to keep mine within the boundaries. So as you can see, we've got the main area set up. Now I just want to create one or two extra changes inside of our aside, and we'll be done. So come back in the next video and we'll do just that.